Hi, I'm Becky Urkola, and I'm sharing my story with the intent that it can bring hope to those who are in difficult situations. I am from a family of 10 children. I had an amazing childhood, and I got married when I was young. I was about 19, and my first husband was sexually and mentally abusive. I stayed in that marriage about 8 years, and by the time it ended, I was a broken and beaten woman, and I didn't have any self-esteem at all. And as I left, I didn't have any way to financially take care of my children, and I didn't have the confidence to do anything else. So I thought the only solution was to get married again. And so I met another man, and quickly he pushed for an engagement and to get married. And because I thought there was no other options, I did that. I got married. And within like 3 days of getting married, he was served an order, a protective order, because of some domestic violence. And that was a big red flag that I should have seen, and I didn't. And there was many red flags that followed. But I didn't feel confident enough, and I didn't want to get rid of another marriage or fail in another marriage. And so I just stayed in the marriage, and I tried to make it work. And it just got worse and worse. At first there was just pretending to hit or threatening to hit or throwing things and breaking things. And then it got worse, and he began to hurt my children and hurt me. And I just kept rationalizing that it was okay and we could make it, and this was better than being divorced. But then the financial part of it was the worst part, and that seems sad to me now, that it wasn't my children getting hurt or me getting hurt that encouraged me to make different choices, but it was our financial situation that really made it hard. I encouraged him to go to school. He had lost job after job after job, and when he'd lose a job, he wouldn't work for 6 months, and then we'd have to have assistance from the state or from our church. And I just got so tired of getting help and not being able to support ourselves and our children. And so he decided to go to school, and it was just a few short months into the school that he quit. And of course he blamed it on me that he wasn't successful. And then we were back in the same situation we were before, which was we weren't making enough, and we were getting assistance from different places. And so I decided to go to school, and he wasn't happy with this. He didn't like that he didn't know who I was talking to and who I was seeing, because up until that point, he knew everything about me. Like, he would answer my phone, he would answer the home phone, he would grill everybody that would call me, and so he knew everything. And it got to the point where my family didn't even, want to call or talk to me, because he just would grill them and ask them all these questions. And so I did feel isolated, and I did feel scared, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I chose to go to school, and I signed up for like 2 classes, and I started to go to school. And up at school, I started to get more confidence, and I started to see that there was options, that I could get some schooling, and I could maybe support my family. And I just started to feel better about myself. And the next semester, he saw the change in me, and he saw that he was losing his control, and he quit his job, and he signed up for every class that I was in. So then we were together 24 hours a day. He knew everything I was doing. and he followed me everywhere, and I was never alone. I remember one night he was getting ready, or he wanted me to help him with a test he was taking. And I was really busy. At that time, we had 8 children, and I was sewing at home, and I was taking school, so I didn't have a lot of extra time, and I couldn't help him. And he got upset, and he left and went to take the test. And up till that point, we had been together for 2 months, and we had never been apart. And I all of a sudden realized I was by myself and that I was free. And so I quickly went to my parents' house. I gathered up my children, and I went to my family's house, and I told them some of the experiences that had happened over the last couple of months, because the violence had gotten worse. He had threatened to kill me with a loaded gun. First he threatened to kill himself, and I said, go ahead and kill yourself. And that, I don't even know why I said that. And then he immediately turned the gun on me and threatened to kill me. And thank heavens, he put the gun down, and both of us survived. And then another time, shortly after that, I was wanting to leave, or he didn't like something I was saying, and he choked me, and I almost passed out. And at those 2 moments, I thought, what is happening? Who is this man? I thought, you think that I thought he loved me. And why would he do this? It was just like this monster that came up inside of him that I didn't know existed. And so I went over to my parents, and I told them these experiences, and I told them how scared I was, and we figured out that it was time for me to leave. And previously in the marriage, my mom and dad had gotten me to a safe house, and they had tried to help me. And I wasn't in a good place at that moment that I could leave. But now I was. I was in the middle of school. I had some hope. My mom and dad actually had a place in their basement that I could move in with my children and have a place to stay while I went to school. And so everything was lining up for me to be able to get divorced and be free of this abusive, horrible marriage. As I was back in the bedroom talking to my dad, my ex-husband called on the phone, and my sister answered the phone, and he asked to talk to me, and she said, she's not available. And he says, yes, she is. I just saw her come out of the bedroom. Oh, it scared us to death. He was outside watching. He knew everything we were doing, and I don't know how long he'd been there. And he came in, and he got the children, and he went home. And then I was upset. I'm I knew what was going to happen. I was going to go back, and he wouldn't let me leave, just like all the many other times I had tried to leave and call the police. Every time I tried to do anything, he had physically stopped me, or he pulled the phone out of the wall. Or one time I even tried to jump out of a window, the second-story window, and he just pulled me or caught me as I ran around the house. I tried to leave many times, and I was just sure I would never be able to leave. But when I got back to the house, he had called our church leaders, and they had convinced him that it would be good if he left, even just for a short time, so that maybe we could work things out. And so, miracle upon miracle, he got up the next morning, and he packed his bags, and he moved in with his mom. And then it was just me and my kids, and we were safe, and everything was going to be okay. And I remember staying in the house and just trying to figure out, what I was doing. And my brother, who had been a police officer in the military, called me up in the middle of the night and spent 2 hours convincing me to get a protective order, because he knew the severity of the situation. I didn't know. I was just glad that he had finally left, and I wasn't going to get a protective order because I knew it would make him angry. But after 2 hours, I agreed to go get a protective order. So I went and got a protective order, and during the next couple of weeks, I moved out of the home, and just kept taking my kids back to the same school they were in. I was going to school, and I was just feeling safe and like everything was going to be okay, and that life was going to be good. But unbeknownst to me, he was following me and stalking me and planning to kidnap me. So I think it was 2 weeks after I went up to school, and of course he knew all my schedule and he knew everything about me, and I was up at school, and he got in my van and he tried to talk to me. He tried to convince me that I needed to come back and that we needed to work things out. And at that moment, I didn't realize how scared I was of him. I didn't realize, like, while I was with him, I had held the fear down, and I'd held all this scaredness and everything down, because you don't like feeling scared all the time. You don't like feeling fear all the time. But when he got in the van, even though at that moment, I don't think he intended on hurting me, I was so scared. And he saw that, and he left. And this whole time I'm thinking, he's just going to move on with his life, and he's going to leave me alone, and everything's going to be all right. I did call the cops, and within 30 minutes, they had arrested him, and his mom had bailed him out. And so that was kind of discouraging to me, because I thought he's never going to realize there's a consequence. And I never thought he would get a consequence, because up until that point in his life, he had gotten out of all the consequences. His mother had made sure she bailed him out and helped him, and he had no consequences for things that he'd done. And so another week or two later, I was coming out of college, and I had actually had an awesome day. A cute boy had smiled at me, and I thought things were wonderful. And as I was walking up to my car, I was digging in my backpack, and somebody jumped out of a van and pushed me into the van. And I looked in there, and it was a young boy was in the driver's seat, and my ex-husband had grabbed me. And I looked at the young boy, and I said, "You don't want to do this. You don't want to do this." And that made him so angry. That made my ex-husband so angry. He just punched him. He just punched me. And from there, he punched me, and he ripped my clothes off, and he raped me. And he just started having the kid drive. They had this planned. They'd had it planned for weeks. And we drove to we drove to a bank. And while we were at the bank, my ex-husband went in to get money. And I tried to convince that kid to let me go. I remember rushing around the van, and all the doors, the handles had been taken off the doors. And so I realized the only way to get out was to get out the driver's door. And I took this boy's face in my hand, and I begged him to let me go. I said, "I have 6 kids, please let me go." And he said, "I can't." He wouldn't let me go. And my ex-husband came out. He saw that I was not tied up anymore. And he put me on the back seat, and he taped me all up again. And he took me to a motel. And at that point, my eyes were taped with tape in my mouth, and my hands are behind my back. And I was bare from here down because of the things he'd done, and I was bleeding, and my nose was broken, and I was bleeding. And we pulled up to this motel outside, and he just kept pushing me, and I felt going up a step and going into a room, and he pushed me down on the bed, and then I could hear him tell the kid to leave and to go back to school. And I thought, I'm dead. I'm not going to make it. Because up till that point, he just kept talking about all these ways that he was going to kill me and how he was going to put me down the river and my family would never see me again. And so I just thought, there's just no way. And I had prayed and prayed and prayed for that kid to help me. And it was like an empty prayer. It was never going to get answered. And so this was it. He laid me on the bed and he tied me to the four corners of the bed and he taped my entire face. And I couldn't breathe and I was so scared. And I found like a little air hole right here. And he just kept pressing all the bubbles down to make sure that I couldn't breathe. And then I heard him go in the bathroom. And then I started begging Heavenly Father to let me die because it was too scary, because I couldn't breathe and I just couldn't do it anymore. And I went to a different place, like a room that was light and bright and happy, and there was lots of people there. And then the next thing I knew, I could feel the tape being pulled off of my face. And I could hear all these people come into the room. And unbeknownst to me, there had been a gal up at the college. And she had seen me get pushed in the van, and she didn't know if it was a joke or not. And she had gone down and she'd called. And because of the previous time I'd called the police, they knew it was my ex-husband doing the kidnapping and me that had gotten kidnapped. And they were able to come in and save me, like miracle upon miracle, just at the last moment. To end with a positive note, I wanted to share what happened in the courts and then how I'm doing now. So we went through a year of going to court, trying to get a protective order, which you would think would be easy after that point. But getting the protective order was quite difficult, and I actually had to commit to testify about things that happened before the kidnapping. And then my ex-husband finally agreed to give me the protective order. And then in the courts, we'd go to court over and over. My family, it was very upsetting. And then in the end, my ex-husband wrote a letter from prison threatening to finish the job. And so that was found, they intercepted it. And then, so they sentenced him to 15 to life. So that means he's got 30 to life. And so what a wonderful gift that my children and I are able to live free of fear and know that, that I know that they can be raised and I can take care of them and they're going to be fully into adulthood before he gets out of prison. About 6 years later, I met a wonderful man, and I married, and I've had 3 more children since then. And I became a nurse. Just incredible things happening in my life. So happy and doing so well, and would like to share my experience to give hope for other people who have been through difficult situations to know that they too can get through hard things. I'm Becky Urkula, and I encourage you to subscribe and follow to my channel and learn the tips and the steps that I'm taking and have taken to become a thriving survivor, because I want to bring hope that you too can get through difficult times. Thank you for listening to my story.